Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I really appreciate the time you spending a few minutes. I try to keep these videos to about 10 minutes or less because I know your time is valuable. So here we go. I'm just going to dive right into it. But before I do, and take a moment and pause there. If you like content like this, I really appreciate you doing one small thing for me, maybe two, hitting the like button, hitting the, share it, leave a comment, help the channel grow. Because the more people that see this kind of content, the more value we can add. The reason I make these videos at all is to share a little bit of my knowledge and try to give you some frame of perspective, give you a video to share to somebody to help them along your combined journey, to help educate people, like say, why are you so into Bitcoin? What is the big deal? Well, I'm going to be talking about Bitcoin, yes, today. But what I'm also going to be talking about today is I'm keeping it very basic and simple. And I'm going to talk about value, okay? How do we create value? All right, so value and wealth. I talked about wealth in the previous video, but this one I'm going to talk about value. And how do you find wealth and value? Well, wealth is created by finding value before it's reflected in an asset's price. I'll say that again. Wealth is created by finding value before it's reflected in its price. Typical example, the stock market. Okay, let's just say that I'm going to use Tesla because everybody knows that Tesla went up a lot. It was in I don't know what the stock price is of Tesla right now. I'm not even going to look it up. You can put in the comments below. But imagine if you got the Tesla for $1 a share and you bought Tesla for $1 a share and you kept it this whole time. Now, that would have been a wild ride and you've been very tempted, I'm sure, at some point to cash out. But if you go into, like I do this with Bitcoin, just say you go into a crypto coma. What if you had bought Bitcoin for $1, say 10 years ago, and now Bitcoin, you wake up and it's over $70,000 as I'm talking here today. So you went from $1 to you basically 70, what is that? 7 million percent return in 10 years. That's a lot of return. But I'm sure at some point you have been tempted to sell at that point. You were like, if you bought something for $1 and it got to 1,000, wouldn't you be tempted to sell at least some of it? Well, what if it got to 10,000? You'd be tempted to sell again. But the point is that, like, if you slipped into crypto coma, right, and just like you went to sleep for 10 years, you bought something for $1, and you woke up and it's $70,000. Be like, oh wow! But you weren't around for the crazy ride in between where we got to 20,000, then went down to 6. Then it went to 70,000, went down to 15, and now back at 70,000 again. That's the crazy part of it. But the point of understanding why you got in, how you got in, why you were interested in this kind of stuff before is that you're looking at assets, not just like Bitcoin, but Bitcoin, gold, silver, real estate, collectible art. I still don't remember who did the Mona Lisa. I should have looked it up. It's not Rembrandt, but anyway, leave in the comments if you know who painted the Mona Lisa. But the Mona Lisa is probably the most famous painting, one of the most famous paintings that's out there, and there's only one of them. Now, I want to say Michelangelo, but I'm probably going to get that wrong. It's escaping me. I've probably seen too many Ninja Turtle commercials, or I just can't remember. I don't know it's not Donatello. I know that's for sure. But I want to say Michelangelo, but I'm probably wrong. It's been a while since I've taken an art class. Sorry for that, but in any event, we know the Mona Lisa is worth something. Why? There's only one of them. The artist is no longer alive, and it's deemed to have value. It's perceived in the marketplace to have value because it's rare, it's collectible. It's one of a kind. It's hard to acquire, and as a result of all that, it's got a lot of value. It goes up. It's kind of like the Honus Wagner baseball card, which I think there's only like a dozen of those. And the reason those are rare is because the original baseball cards, little side story here. Original baseball cards came in like cigar boxes, and Honus Wagner was not a smoker. So he said, don't put my card in anything anymore. And now there's only like 13 of them in existence. There were very few originally made because he said, don't do that. So they stopped doing it. But now there's only a dozen or so that are out there. And he was one of the most famous baseball players back in the early days of baseball, more than 100 years ago. And now with only a dozen or so, it's more valuable than Mickey Mantle rookie card or Babe Ruth or names you've heard of. Honus Wagner, it's very rare because there's only so many of them. It's like like certain postage stamps, like the plane that's upside down, like a misprint, like these certain things that create rarity and value. Why am I talking about that? Well, certain assets are like they're rare. Like originally, gold is the classic example of money because it's hard to acquire, it's hard to get out of the ground. It lasts a lot well over time. It doesn't degrade. Like it's not like you're gonna buy a piece of fruit and it goes bad in a few weeks. Gold lasts forever, it seems. Because it's rare and hard to acquire, it's said to have value, and because humans put value on it. Now, that's the species that we value money because money is used for means of exchange, storing value, purchasing things, and so on. But gold was the representation of money for the longest of time. It still is deemed as one of the top currencies and money systems that's out there. But there's been lots of other currencies that have been created. But the problem is that they're not rare. They're not hard to, well, sometimes they're hard to acquire, but they're not hard to create. And especially for governments who like to print more dollars into existence or virtually could hit some keys on the keyboard and make more dollars appear in the bank accounts. That's one of their tools to control the financial system. It's a system. It's not an economy. An economy is built around something money is supposed to be hard to acquire, hard to get, hard to create. That's what makes it so valuable. Just like creating that Mona Lisa is very hard to create because there's only one of them. So when things are hard to create and they're collectible, like high-end cars or certain planes or certain assets that are just hard, like real estate in Manhattan is the one that Michael Saylor, who's, if you don't know, he's one of the biggest advocates out there for Bitcoin. He typically talks about the real estate in Manhattan as being very hard to acquire, it's only so much of it. And Bitcoin is the analogous thing to New York City real estate. There's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. They're hard to acquire, and now there's almost 20 million in existence. It's over 90% mined already, and we're reaching a point where in less than a month from now, when I was speaking to you in March of 2024, the halving event is coming up, and that happens every 4 years. That's when the supply gets cut in half. Right now, they make 900 a day. It's going to be cut down to 450 a day. And the demand right now for Bitcoin, just among the ETFs that have been launched since January, more than 11 times the daily supply of what's currently being created as of now. And that's going to double because the supply is going to be cut in half in about a month, less than a month. So rarity adds value. Hard to acquire adds value. That's where the value of the asset, once you understand certain aspects of an asset, you see why there's value to it. 10 years ago, Bitcoin was hard to acquire because you had to be a tech person to get it. You didn't have the exchanges. It was hard where do you go and get Bitcoin? What do you do with it? That sort of thing. But now, fast forward to 2024, we have big money from Wall Street coming into Bitcoin. We have governments in other countries using Bitcoin as a store of value. El Salvador's doing it. Central African Republic's doing it. Other countries are acquiring it. There's lots of people acquiring Bitcoin now, way more than it's being generated. So it's going to be a pretty rare and hard to acquire asset class really soon, which is one of the main qualities of storing value. So value, again, I'll say it from the third time, and I appreciate you sticking around for the whole video here, but once again, value is created by scarcity. It creates the value, right? So that's part of it, and I'm probably going to say it the wrong way, but wealth is acquired by finding value in something before it's priced in. So recognizing value early on is key to developing wealth and seeing that you can get something that's really going to be hard to acquire and have a lot of value in the future before it's reflected in its price in another currency. So if you had been around for the Bitcoin for like $1 and you could have done that, obviously you should have, but it's not too late. That's the point I'm trying to make to you, is that it's going to be harder to acquire in the future again. It was hard to acquire 7, 8, 9 years ago before Coinbase existed. Fortunately, Coinbase was one of the first things that I was around for. But in 2016, there were only really a couple of exchanges, and it was not easy to get Bitcoin. Now it's a little bit easier to acquire Bitcoin, but it's going to be harder to get because there's going to be less of it available. So if you can get an asset that's going to be more scarce in the future, that people already believe it has value and that value is probably going to go up, that's a good option to, like, not financial advice, but that's a real good recipe for having more value in the future. So what are your thoughts on value? Does Bitcoin reflect it? Leave a comment down below. I read them all. Please, again, like, share, subscribe. Really appreciate the time, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.